So this is part 3 of our amazing journey to Israel.
Welcome back.
Welcome back indeed. I wanted to kind of go back and talk about how I think things worked out with our next trip, because I think I didn't clearly state that, you know, when we were planning our day, that third day after, you know, we had spent the 2 days in Jerusalem, our plan was to come back and do a tour with Abe and Ace and Abraham of Bethlehem. We were going to do Jericho, Jordan, you know, all those key,
the Dead Sea,
Cave of Machpelah. So, you know, we were planning to do all of those key things with them. But one of the things I think that happened is when we had, you know, continued on our trip that next day, I didn't hear from them in a long time. And so, you know, when I was trying to plan whether we were to go back to Jerusalem or whatever, you know, because I hadn't heard from them, we just decided to stay where we were. So I'll get to that point a little later. But, you know, so we set out that morning to drive down to the Dead Sea and Sodom and Gomorrah. So my main thing was I wanted to see where Sodom and Gomorrah was, because I remember, again, seeing, you know, the video that I believe Ron White had done, and others had done videos as well on the area of Sodom and Gomorrah and what they were able to find there. And so for me personally, I wanted to go and experience that for myself. See, you know, the area where Lot's wife, like, you know, I think as a symbolic kind of like representation to see where, you know, that was. And so we did. So we drove down to where the Dead Sea was. He followed the, you know, it was pretty straightforward. I don't think it was very difficult at all. Initially, we were told that we could not drive through the West Bank. And so I did the long roundabout route out, you know, around the West Bank to get down to where the Dead Sea was. You know, it took a lot of time going out of the way, but we did that. And we went down to the area where the Dead Sea is. And while we were down there, it was hot. I would say it was very, very hot, very dry. And you can see where when God curses a place, there is nothing that is going to grow there again. And so when we were in the area where Sodom and Gomorrah was, the salt mixed with the soil, and so there is no vegetation growing, and nothing grows there. It's just desert. And so we drove over to the area where, you know, the symbolic Lot's wife is, Mount Sodom. We were able to go to that area. And I think we drove down a little further, and I was looking out for, you know, areas that I know I had seen before talked about being where the cities were. And if you remember in the Bible, as it talked about Sodom and Gomorrah, there were about at least 5 cities that were in that vicinity, that area, that were all destroyed. And so I wanted to see where those cities could potentially be. And so as we were driving and we were going into these different areas, it was unmistakable, I would say. Some of the areas, when you would look at what would be quote unquote mountains, you could literally see what looked like pillars of like a building, what looked like windows that were cut out, where you could see how with the flash fire, it kind of like solidified the
And
edifice
froze it.
where it was
Yeah.
and froze it so that it didn't collapse in ash. So you could literally still see the remnants of what was a city.
Sodom and Gomorrah, the cities of the plain. In Genesis 19, we read how these cities were destroyed by God with brimstone and fire from heaven, the first biblical record of God's vengeance upon evil since the Great Flood. My husband, biblical archaeologist Ron Wyatt, never planned to search for these cities, but in 1989, while working on another project, he was suddenly impressed to stop and examine some odd-shaped, whitish-colored formations along the western shore of the Dead Sea. After driving past these at least 30 or 40 times in the past 12 years, this time they suddenly looked like the shapes of city walls and buildings. Pulling over, he and his crew closely examined these desolate areas. Taking samples of the material, they discovered that they broke right off in their hand and disintegrated into dust the consistency of talcum powder, as Greg Brewer shows us here. In August of 1990, Ron returned to these sites to thoroughly explore them, 5 sites which he had thus far located. I accompanied him this trip along with Marv and Renetta Wilson of Garland, Texas. As we approached the first site we examined, we all could easily see the shapes Ron had described. As no roads led into these areas, we pulled our car off the road and began the long, difficult hike. There was no doubt that these areas were unique to the immediate surrounding area. It was very difficult to walk there, for the loose material made walking an arduous chore. Following what clearly looked like the shape of an outer wall, we soon met with a most breathtaking sight. The wall had ended, and we were now looking down into what appeared to be the entrance into the city. But before we entered, our interest was captivated by a most unusual find. About 100 yards from the entrance, upon a high level, was a singular shape. As we viewed it from all angles, we all agreed it plainly bore the shape of a sphinx. We later found more of these sphinx shapes, which we'll see later in the film. As we entered the open section, we soon found ourselves walking along very distinctive paths which communicated with one another just as our streets today. As we approached what appeared to be a dead end, we found it turned to the right and continued along until it met another street. There was distinct order here. These were clearly once streets, and along these streets were the shapes of buildings. Even to our untrained eye, the evidence was undeniable. The ziggurat shape near the entrance was almost perfectly preserved. Our research had yielded the fascinating fact that substances burned with sulfur or brimstone had a remaining ash that was heavier than the initial unburned substance. That explained our question as to why the ash of these cities had been able to remain all these 3,900 years. The layering present in all the formations was another positive evidence that whatever these once were, they had been burned at temperatures exceeding 4,000 or 5,000 degrees. This layering effect was the result of thermal ionization. Whenever a substance is burned at extremely high temperatures, the ions of the various substances being burned attract and repel, distorting the flame. Ron drew our attention to features present here which simply do not occur naturally. He showed us a section which revealed a broken double wall which extended toward us at a perfect 90-degree angle. The site we were examining was located at the base of Masada, and soon we all decided that we should go to the top of Masada and film these areas from there. As we took the cable car to the top, the view was breathtaking. The shape of the city was perfectly revealed below us. Here we saw a giant platform-like area, perfectly symmetrical, which was identical to the temple areas of other ancient cities, such as the biblical Shushan or Susa, located in present-day Iran. Then we saw the raised section which we had climbed upon earlier, with the Sphinx shape and the ziggurat. We were all convinced, but we also knew there had to be more evidence than this to convince others.
Now the Bible tells us that it rained fire and brimstone upon the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now what you see in front of you here is the results of large and small, well, varying sized chunks of sulfur, burning sulfur that have hit. And what we find here is that God rained this burning sulfur down upon this city, and rain is a perfect description of it. It landed just in the pattern that rain would fall, and the stuff, of course, the accumulative heat of all of this upon the city set the entire thing ablaze. The flash point of every material there, metal, stone, of course the people, and everything burned, and this sulfur continued to burn, and it vitrified the material around it after it had burned it all up, sealed itself off from the oxygen, and then of course smothered itself out. And in each of these little crystalline capsules here is a varying size chunk of sulfur, and there are millions of these in these ashes that we have here. Now some of them we have cracked open so you can see the sulfur inside, and others we have left intact, but there are millions of these here. So this shows that God indeed rained fire and brimstone upon these cities. And if you'll look in your dictionary, under brimstone you'll find that it is sulfur.
As soon as he got home from that trip, Ron took several of the samples to Galbraith Labs near Knoxville, Tennessee. The yellow balls in the center of the reddish rings proved to be 95.72% sulfur, with traces of several other elements, all of which he was told would contribute to an extremely high temperature fire. When Ron asked them if they could perform a BTU test to determine the degree of heat this would give off, he was told that they couldn't because it would damage their stainless steel testing chamber. The material surrounding the encapsulated sulfur was also tested and proved to be ash. At home, we did our own small test and burned some of the sulfur in a spoon. The purplish flame is indicative of the intense heat, which prohibited our holding the spoon as it burned. We later discovered our spoon had holes in it from the fire. Then, we placed a small piece of the outer material also in the spoon and attempted to burn it, but it wouldn't burn at all. It didn't even darken. It was already completely consumed by fire, and nothing was left to ignite.
And I got out and I was initially thinking, you know, it would be really interesting to take some of that. First of all, I was looking to see if I could find those sulfur balls that was talked about from when fire and brimstone fell down in the city. They actually have found sulfur balls where if you light it on fire, you could see how it could burn in an extremely high temperature. Right. And because it is so fast, it just like, it freezes, you know, burns that area where it falls. And so I was looking, so you can literally see the layers. You can see the layers of the city. I didn't find any of the sulfur balls, but I know that I was in the area where that city was, because when I got out, you could see, like, I could see like the windows. I could see where, you know, the pillars were. You could see like where stairs were. It was very, very interesting. And the other thing that I would say about it is it had a very eerie feel to it. I remember when I was getting out and I was trying to walk around a little bit and, you know, take a look at, you know, more around that area. It was an eerie kind of feel that it had that was just not comfortable.
Right.
And then you were the one that told me, because you had gone to get some of the like rocks or something. And what did you say?
I said, you know, this place was destroyed by the Father in heaven for the reason of how horrible it was and the ungodly things that they were engaged in. Why would you take anything away from this place? One of the things that we did do, though, we went down to where we could have gotten to the water, and we collected some Dead Sea salt.
Yes, that we definitely did. So I was able to get my own Dead Sea salt, and I have my own natural hair and skincare business. And so part of my products that I make is made with Dead Sea salt. So to me, I can now say that I have sourced it directly myself.
About 3 pounds worth.
Yeah, it was quite a bit, So we did definitely get some of the Dead Sea salt and some of the liquid, right? Yeah. Some of the Dead Sea water. So we have some of that. And so then...
So in terms of that, it wasn't from the destruction site that we got that.
No, it wasn't.
We got that from the sea.
Exactly. It was from the sea itself.
We felt okay with that.
Yes, definitely. Because, yes, I would have not been as comfortable getting it directly from where I know the city was destroyed. But so we got a nice little tour of that area. Kind of got a little turned around when we were trying to find our way back. And when we got turned around is when we saw the hotel resort that people actually go and bathe, and you know, it's lovely. It really is nice. So we finally got back on track and we made our way towards dimona, and it was getting late. It was Friday. And so I knew that Sabbath was coming, and I didn't know what the situation was going to be like for us, especially if we needed to get something to eat really quickly. So I remember looking up a restaurant that we could see if we could get some food at. And I had called ahead.
Because they closed at a certain time.
They closed at a certain time. So I called ahead and I was trying to get directions and all of that. And luckily, you know, they were saying that they were still open because some of the other places were closed. I still got turned around, but we finally talked to the owner, and then he was able to give us directions directly to where the restaurant was. And they had the best seitan. What did you say?
Yes,
I mean, it was absolutely delicious.
And because in that particular area, they are vegans.
Yes, they're vegans.
So they had wonderful vegetarian food.
Yes, vegetarian foods. It's the meat substitute, so the meat supplement. So it's like the seitan made up out of the gluten flour. That was just absolutely delicious. They just really, really stuck their foot in it when they made that. So it was absolutely delicious. And then from there, the owner knew that it was late, and we decided at this point, I hadn't heard from, you know, the guys back in Jerusalem. And so I figured, well, you know what, we're probably going to have to overnight here. And so he then reached out to, one of the community leaders and was able to, and when I say the community leaders, I mean that it's a Black Hebrew Israelite community in Dimona. And it's called the Village of Peace is the name of the village where they live. And so he reached out to one of the elders or one of the leaders there, and they have a guest house. And who would have known? I had no idea. no idea, because I think when I was looking at hotels in the area, it was really high, some of the prices that I was seeing. And so luckily, you know, they had a room available. So, you know, we were able to have a place to stay. It was very affordable. And we were able to spend time directly there in the Village of Peace with the Hebrew Israelite community and welcome in the Sabbath. And I would say that, you know, there was another lady that was staying there in the guest house as well. And she was just wonderful. She was so nice. And so we had an opportunity to really, you know, connect and talk. And, you know, I think the very next, so we overnighted there, and then the next day was Sabbath. And it was, I think, the first time we had experienced, you know, in terms of a community setting, a Sabbath where it is just rest. You know, it is no big production. There's no, it literally is taking it literal when it says a day of rest. And so that Sabbath was a day of rest. There was no activity or anything going on. It was just restful and peaceful. And she even took us on a little walk around the community. Yeah, so that was one of the things that we did do. We just did a nice little tour around the community, just within the community itself, so that we could kind of see where things were. And that was Amalia, right? That was Amalia that gave us the tour. And we met Minister Sar and Yoya, I think is its name. So then they were like some of the leaders within the community, and so they met us. They were just so gracious. They were wonderful. They were welcoming, and we just felt at home in that sense. It was just really, really nice. And then we learned about their history and how, you know, it came about that they ended up in Israel, and the path, the journey that they took. I think their leader was Ben Ami, and he was, I think, in New York. I think he came from New York, and then they went to Liberia, right? Wasn't it Liberia?
It was in New York or California. I'm not sure.
It was in the United States, and from the United States, they came to Liberia, and that was it, Ghana.
No, Liberia.
It was Liberia. Okay, so they went to Liberia, and then from Liberia, they went to Israel. And so they kind of, you know, talked about that journey and how it got to be where they are now and how they built their community. I think now it's about 50
years since they have.
It's 50 years since then.
And established themselves in Israel.
And the size of the community is like what, 500 to 1,000?
500, over 500.
Yeah, so it's a small community, but you know, it's a thriving community. It's a well kind of like organized and established community. So they have all the things that they need. They make their own clothes. They have their own restaurants. They do their own printing. They have what was it? There was another thing that they have their own ice cream shop. There's like a number. They have their own school. There's like, it's literally a well-established community where there's a lot. They do the graphic design, and so there's a lot of different things that they have going on with the community that is really thriving. So they're really doing well, and so we were blessed, and you know, that we had an opportunity to spend some time with them. And you know, it was while we were there that, you know, we had said that we still wanted to see a few other places. So that was when I had shared that we wanted to do a tour of the cave of Machpelah, which, if you know, that's where Abraham, Sarah, Jacob, and Leah are buried. That's where their tombs were. So we wanted to go to that. We wanted to go to Jericho. We wanted to do the River Jordan and Bethlehem. And what was the other place? We
went back to the Dead Sea as well.
We went back to the Dead Sea. And so there was a couple of places that we really wanted to make sure was on our, you know, to-do of places to see while we were there. And so I think when we were sharing that, we found out that Sar was able to do a tour, and he was actually training other people some of the young people to be able to do those same kind of tours. So you can see how the knowledge is transferring down to the next generation. And so I think, what was it, that next day, what was it, Sunday, I think it was, or is it Monday? It's either Sunday or Monday that we had decided that we were going to go ahead and do that tour of, no, I think it was a Sunday. So it was the next day. So we were able to go and do a tour and see some of these places that was in the West Bank. Okay, so mind you, before I had said we were told that we couldn't drive because the car was rented in Tel Aviv. We were told that we couldn't drive with our vehicle in the West Bank. Not the case. We were able to drive with our vehicle in the West Bank because I drove. Now, there was a lot of security stops along the way. We didn't have any problems going through or passing through any of the stops, but there were a lot of different areas where the soldiers had their posts and that we drove through. And so I think when we started out going to the area where the Negev desert is. And Saw gave an amazing kind of he read scripture and he gave an amazing kind of telling of why the land looks the way it is, because of the curse, because of the disobedience and the outright, defiance that the children of Israel had in regards to their relationship with the Most High. And he had warned them. And because of their obstinance and their stiff-neckedness, that was what led to the land being cursed. And so he had kind of read scripture that talked about all of that as we looked out in the desert, and it talked about how it could be replenished again. And it was just, I'm telling you, it was just amazing. It was just absolutely beautiful.
The wilderness and the solitary place, those are names for barren and desert places. It said they will be glad, that we're glad for them. So it's no longer mourning, but gladness. And the desert shall rejoice and blossom like the rose.
Wow.
It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice, even with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given unto it, the excellency of Carmel and Sharon. These are places in the region that are known for particular plants and beauty and what have you. It says, they shall see the glory of Yah and the excellency of our God. Now, be listening for that singing, that communication, whatever you feel. And this is something that the early Israelis knew. David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister, knew that. That's why he made his home in this part of the country. And he was right. This part of the land is going to respond and bloom again. But they don't know the formula. First of all, they're not really in tune. So the land ain't going to respond to them. But when you and I are on the land and we are actually having a love affair with the land again, the land's going to respond. The creation will respond. But they're trying to force the land to do this. So these trees here, they're all planted by Israelis. They planted these forests here. These are man-made forests. They're trying to push it. They're going to force it, make it do what it's going to do. But there are seeds all around here that are laying dormant. They're laying dormant. And at the appointed time, they will regenerate. And there'll be people will say, oh, it's a miracle. And yeah, it is a miracle. But science has proven it. These things happen. So that's our faith. That's our connection. And we dedicate, this day to you and all those that you touch. Amen. To get back to our station. Yeah. And as much as there are those who want to suppress our rise, it's a done deal. Yeah. It's going to happen. It's happening as we speak. We are witnesses. Yes. So let us say hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
And from there, I think as we were driving, we had seen Telrod, right? Telrod, which is one of the cities that David had established when I think he was dealing with Absalom. When Absalom was trying to take the city from him and he had to run and flee Jerusalem. And so Telrod was one of the areas where he had built another city. So we were able to see that. We passed through areas where you could see the Palestinian settlements and, see the way their housing and everything is set up. And then I think our first stop as we were making our trip after the Negev desert was to go to the cave of Machpelah. And so that was, again, the cave where Abraham, Sarah, Jacob, and Leah are buried. And so we were able to see their tombs. So they have it out in these actually pretty long tombs, wasn't it? Pretty long. In like what is it called? The sarcophagus. So they had like that whole thing where, you know, their bodies were buried. So we were able to see that. And, you know, that just kind of, you could see the cave where it was. That whole experience was interesting. I know that there's another place as well that they had talked about on the Palestinian side that, you know, they also are believing could be it. So yeah, so we had that experience. And then I think from there we had gone to Jericho. Wasn't it Jericho we went to?
Yes.
So from there we went to Jericho, and while we were there in Jericho, we had an opportunity to see the mountain where Satan took Jesus to tempt him. Remember when he told him that all of this, and he showed him all this, the major cities of the world, like he gave him a panorama view of the world from that mountain and said, all of this I will give you if you bow down and worship me. I'm like, the world that I created? Okay. So that is the mountain that, you know, they say that Jesus had been taken up to. So you can see that. And and I think underneath of that was, it was kind of like a lot of like banana trees, and there was different things that were there. It was fertile, and there was a reason why he said it was fertile. I think he said it was because it was a land that it belonged to one of the, it was another tribe that it belonged to, that God said it was their land. And because of that, that curse that affected Israel because of Israel's disobedience didn't impact them, because that was the land that had still been promised to them. And so you could, when you look out in the land, you can still see that it's green. It's not a desert like some of the other places we were looking at. So that was really interesting. And then we had an opportunity to, you know, get some hospitality at that little shop that we stopped at. Right. It was so nice, and we were able to pick up a couple of things. Yes, we did. We did a little bit of damage there, but it was well worth it. I think it was well worth it. And so then from there, I think we went to Bethlehem, right? So from there, we went to Bethlehem, and Bethlehem was the area. So it was a church that they have. It's a Catholic church. It was interesting. And it's a lot of these major biblical spots. The Catholic Church has built a church there so that, you know, you can, you know, see how they have preserved it, the particular areas that are notable in the Bible. So this particular area, this is the place where Jesus was born, in the manger. And so they have that whole area in the lower part of the church where you can go and you can literally see where the baby Jesus was born. Okay. So we were able to go and get that experience. And then I think from there, we had gone to the River Jordan. Right. And so from the River Jordan, we were able to literally see that right on the other side of the river is Jordan. I guess that's why they call it the Jordan River. It's directly on the other side of the river. And so that particular area is the same place, if you remember when Abe was telling us about that crossing. That's supposed to be the same area where Joshua crossed to go into the promised land, and it's also that same area where Jesus was baptized. So it's interesting that it would be in that same place, that again, that symbology of coming into the promised land, and then Jesus coming and give us an opportunity to make it into the promised land through his sacrifice. It just comes together, right? Yes, so it just is so fascinating how he pulls the pieces of the puzzle together and really fits it. So that, you know, all of the symbolism of it makes sense.
All the time to defend this Jordan.
So we are here at the Jordan River, and it's so calm. The water is cool. The day is very hot. So this has been an amazing opportunity to experience where Joshua crossed over to the promised land, and then a few thousand years later, 4,000, was it 2,000 years later, that Jesus was able to come here and get baptized. So we are just so excited to be here, and we wanted to share this experience so that you can see what it is like here at the Jordan River.
And show our guide right behind us.
Yes, we want to show our amazing guide who has been giving us this awesome tour and giving us a historical perspective that is not just looking at it from the traditional way of looking at Israel, but is giving it a perspective that includes us, the original people of the land. And so we are blessed to be back in our homeland. Hallelujah.
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 And so we were able to experience that and wade in the Jordan River. And I think from there, we had made our way down to the Dead Sea, right?
Yes.
So because we hadn't really had a chance, because, okay, the first time when we went to the Dead Sea, it was boiling, okay? The water was literally boiling. You saw the bubbles coming up. So we could just kind of gather some of the salt, but we could not wade in the water. It was too hot.
Actually, there were no areas.
It was nowhere. We just pulled off from the side of the road and went and collected some of the salt. But it really wasn't any place where you could go and do any wading.
We didn't see anyone there as tourists.
No. And actually, it's probably a good thing that we did not wade in it, because what we saw later on that documentary on that Dead Sea area, there's big sinkhole areas from, you know, what is happening, how the Dead Sea is too much that is being drawn from it. And so it's drying up. And so as, you know, when it rains, there are big caverns that form under the earth, and it creates huge sinkholes. And so it actually is pretty dangerous. And there were some areas where they had blocked off the road where you couldn't drive anymore because it's just so dangerous there now. So after the Jordan River, we went down to the Dead Sea, and that was the area where I had said before, we had seen the hotel resort where you could go and, you know, bathe in the water and all of that. And so we went to that area, and I was able to, you know, we were able to kind of wade and get that experience, and it was just lovely. It was very nice. And then we still were kind of playing it by ear. Like I said, we didn't have a tour guide like pre-planned out or anything. And so, you know, we were just playing it by ear. We didn't know whether we were going to go back to dimona or whether we were going to go straight to Tel Aviv and spend some time.
I remember when Minister Saw said to us, so what are your plans? I think you all are just winging things as they go. So what do you want to do? Go back to Jerusalem? I could take a bus back or something. Yeah. And we decided to go back to dimona.
Yes, so that's what we ended up doing.
And we are glad that we did.
It was the best decision. So we went back to dimona, and when we had gone back to dimona, I think it was at that time that we had an opportunity where we could really, as we were driving back, we had an opportunity to really talk. We talked about a lot of different topics, a lot of spiritual topics as well. And we had an opportunity to really kind of like get a better feel for the community, and we met more people, and it was just nice. I think it worked out just the way it was supposed to.
She and her daughter came up and spent a few days with us, and we were so happy that they came and joined us. We spent a full day yesterday together moving around the land.
Yes, and that was a blessing.
Hallelujah.
Absolutely.
Yes. So these are, where's Keisha?
I think she finished her tape shifts.
Okay. These are some of our up and coming next generation of public relation experts. You know, this is our team.
Beautiful and
training. Sometimes all they got to do is sit there.
That's okay.
So, hallelujah.
They're an example of people that found out that the window was open because Brother Kofi, that was here for the World Passover, Go Black to Africa, he had posted on YouTube that he was here. So they jumped through the door, got here on Yom Shishi, went on sacred visitation with Sarah Mariel, all behind
all in the places where we don't go. No man can enter. They went with Sarah, saw the places they wanted to see, and returned.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Extraordinary blessing. So if you have the opportunity to do that and retrace those steps, you're welcome to do it. I think you'll be blessed.
And we'll be going down to Tanzania too.
Yeah, one of these days.
Sister Keisha.
Hello. Anyone, nice meeting you all.
Hallelujah. Keisha, I already kind of introduced who you are.
Okay.
But this is the next generation of public relations team members.
Wonderful.
They're in training,
Awesome.
and so we're having a little get together.
Get a quick photo.
We promised
absolutely.
that one of their excursions would be to Songea,
Yeah.
Tanzania.
Yeah.
You're more than welcome.
We have.
To the
You told her.
Bantu village.
You told her about the CFF excursions.
No.
Okay, because the youth organization, every year they're supposed to take a delegation into one of the Edenic countries.
Really?
Eden being Africa. And so we've had groups that go to Ghana, they've gone to Kenya, they've gone to South Africa, and so we'll be we're going to add Tanzania to the destinations.
Awesome. Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Our return flight from Israel was canceled.
Yeah, that was the challenge that we were facing because, we
didn't know what to do. We're calling and they're telling us every time we call, they told us 48 or what? How many hours?
Yeah, they kept telling me 48 hours they'll be able to give me a decision.
Yeah,
48
but then the 48
and it was weeks
hours
that had passed.
Was increasing to days and days and days.
Right.
And still when we called, they had nothing to assure us that we were going to be able to leave.
Yeah. So
until we spoke to that young man, we were in dimona when you spoke to that young man.
Yes.
And he advised to just cancel.
Yeah. So this was with Egypt Air, by the way. So when we had we knew that we were fine going, but coming back, we knew that there was a leg cancel, but I didn't want to cancel the entire trip. So we were figuring because they said that they would try and work something out for us to come back. And so that's what we were waiting for weeks. We had been waiting for them to talk about their, let us know how we could get back without any challenges or issues or anything like that. And so, it just didn't work. And so that was the final advice, that we should go ahead and just cancel it and then just rebook it again. So that's what we ended up doing. And so there was a travel agent there within the community that was able to give us some suggestions. I think he was able to find a flight for us. And so we were able to book that to get back on, I think it was an Ethiopian Airlines is what we ended up taking to come back to where we needed to go.
And Amalia was able to help us to get our PCR registered and get an appointment.
She was very instrumental in making sure that we didn't have any hiccups when we got to the airport.
Right.
So that was kind of how that ended up working out. So we were able to get our flight booked, and then we just decided, because it was leaving, I think, late that night, right? When we finally booked it, it was late that night that it was. So literally, once we booked it, we just drove. We just drove to Tel Aviv, did all the paperwork, dropped off the car, and then made our way back to made our way to the airport itself, and then had to go to where we needed to show the test. And, it was a long walk to get to where we needed to go. And it was just very frustrating, all of that. But we were able to get everything done. And we got on a flight without any hiccups, and were able to get back to Dar es Salaam. So, So that was the trip that we had. I would say that it was a trip of a lifetime. It was an amazing experience. I particularly was so appreciative and felt blessed that I was able to actually see firsthand places that we've only read about in the Bible, you know, to actually see it for yourself. It makes it more real. The experiences that we had was so amazing. Sometimes I learned some lessons while I was there in regards to sometimes when we think that we have everything worked out the way we think it should be, that's not God's plan, you know, for you. And his plan is more perfect. And, you know, the way he worked it out, we were able to meet the right people. He had everything. I mean, he was our tour guide of that Holy Land. He was our tour guide of it. And it couldn't have gone any more spectacular or amazing, that entire trip. I think the entire time we were there, we had favor. Yeah. You know?
And it's just an assurance that, you know, the Father was with us. We would not have had the experience we had unless he was there with us.
Right.
And it assures us that even when we are struggling through certain situations in our lives and we are connected to him and form that kind of a relationship with him, be sure that you're never alone.
Right.
Be sure that he'll always be there. No matter what the situation is, it might be very dire at times, but his assurance and his promises that he'll never leave us nor forsake us.
Yeah.
And so we walk in that light now.
Yeah.
And with more assurance that exactly as he says, he's going to do it.
Yep, exactly. I really 100% agree with that. I feel more energized in regards to my Christian walk. I feel more, you know, at one with my relationship with the Most High. I feel that he wanted us there for a reason. We're still learning what that reason is, but there's a particular reason why he took us there at this time. Like I said, we had no plans to go there. We had no plans whatsoever, but it just worked out perfectly, and there's a reason why. And as we, you know, continue on this journey, we're learning more. It's more is being revealed to us, and we're just excited to see how he unfolds, you know, the things that he is planning for us to do. How he's unfolding it is just amazing.
And I think the trick was also to teach us obedience.
Yeah.
That when we hear a call from him to do something that seems impossible and unlikely, that we won't back away.
Yeah.
Like with that gate that was open, and we'll walk through it.
Yeah, indeed.
Because the experience that we've had like that is going to serve us later on in whatever we may face, to know that he is always there.
Exactly.
He's never far away.
Exactly.
And he will answer when you call.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We just have to trust in him. And as we are, you know, coming down closer and closer to the end of time, there's a number of things that I want to elaborate more on as we move forward, because I don't think we have a whole lot of time, and there's some pertinent things that needs to be shared. So as we move forward, I think we're going to be sharing more about things that have been revealed to us that we think is pertinent to share with you. And so, you know, we look forward to this journey of this walk, this spiritual walk, and sharing it with you. And again, we just ask you to like and subscribe, and, you know, stay with us as we continue on with getting into the Word and getting into where we are in time. Anything else you wanted to share?
And that's what
that
you said.
pretty much covers it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you for watching our videos in these 3 parts, and we look forward to
sharing more as we go along.
Absolutely. Sharing more as we go along.
You are blessed and encouraged.
Exactly. And if you have any comments you want to share, feel free to add your comments in the
Zion. Only you remnant, 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 only you remnant. When is my people gonna learn? If you don't come back, you gon' burn. We take up the scriptures confirm. It's time for my people return. Only you remnant, only you remnant, only you remnant, only you remnant, only only a remnant. Only a remnant. When is my people gon' learn? If you don't come back, you gon' burn. We Jacob, the scriptures confirm. It's time for my people return. Only a remnant. We at the end and we feeling it. We the sand of the sea, but a remnant. Shall return to the word when they hearing it. We the sons of Israel. Our word will never fail. Baptizing in Jacob's well. Holy Spirit ain't playing for real. Will you get protected? He's sending them plagues. I'm trying to make sure that he's sending rain. All in my life, all in my head, all in my walk, all in my legs. You don't got that blood, you walking dead. Walk as he walk, we should live what it say. Only a remnant gonna be spared. Only a remnant gonna be spared. Abba gon' get us out of these countries. Abba son, let me see who really want me. Forsaking our houses, forsaking our money. We got that signal from heaven, he coming. Drinking his cup, nobody running. Flesh getting weak, but the spirit is gunning. We see the prophecy, we know he coming. We see the prophecy, we know he coming. But it's only a remnant. Only a remnant.